And we're live! Hey, SPSM, we're back! It's season 4. And as per Bart Andrews 3 seconds ago, best pre-show ever. Yeah, I know. It probably was. There was dancing. Not do dancing. Hi! I'm at Doc Foreman, and I have somebody who's here with me in Louisiana.
It's me, Tony Wood.
We are so excited to be here. I know.
We are excited to be here.
We can't believe it's season 4.
No, me too.
But it really is, which is amazing.
Feels like 4 minutes.
Underwater.
That's right.
Aww.
So we're really excited. For those of you, we know we have several new viewers, and we want to thank everybody in Texas. So we were just in Texas a few weeks ago.
Yes, sirree.
And oh my God,
Stop Texas suicides.
Can you it's in my bag down there? Can you get the postcard?
Sure.
So this is really exciting. So for those of you who have been following along, SPSM is a suicide prevention social media chat. And we talk about suicide prevention, social media, technology, and innovation. We're really here to provide a unique social media experience. We're going to talk about this just a second. A unique, discuss my current nail color, please. I will totally do that. A unique suicide prevention and innovation experience for folks where we can disseminate information sort of very quickly with great experts in the field in a way that's sort of really approachable and entertaining, and people from lots of backgrounds can join us. And my nail color is Purple Palazzo Plants. I think OPI Fall 2015 says it is fabulous. We're all purple because it's data purple. So
I stuck with nude.
You stuck with nude. So, I'm Dr. Foreman. I am a licensed psychologist. I work at Veterans Affairs. This show's not affiliated with them, and we do this cool show. Tony Wood, describe yourself real quick.
I do stuff and things and such.
Come on.
Please check out ourdatahelps.com.
Tony Wood is the CBO?
No, COO of Quantify Corporation. Better known as Quantify. We do data science and mental health. QNTFY.com.
Go to Our Data Help, set up and donate your data. A lot of us were, damn it,
.org.
Not for profit. We probably should do that, but we didn't. But it's .com.
Okay.
And we have a wonderful co-host with us today who co-hosts and co-produces and is just one of our favorite collaborators, Dr. Andrews. Woo!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I co-produce? I didn't know. What does a co-producer do, April?
All the shit that we do all week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my God, I co-produce the hell out of this show. The level of co-producing that I'm involved in at times, I make it look effortless. I think that's probably how I would describe it. It's effortless co-producing. I'm excited to be here again, Dr. Bart Andrews. You can reach me on Twitter, at Bart Andrews. I'm on Twitter occasionally, on breaks and things when I have time. I work at an amazing, what do you got? What are you showing there, April?
No, talk a little, tell it to Texas. And we're going to show you this. Like, Bart had a really, speaking of co-produce, Bart had a really big hand in things like this. That Bart.
I had my hand all up in that pig. That pig, I was up in it.
So talk a little bit about doing this.
So, okay, here's what happened. April reached out. Actually, Tony said April wanted to talk, which meant that me and Chris Maxwell had to drop our lives and immediately get on Google Hangout so that we weren't later punished, and we'll talk about what SPSM punishment looks like on a different show. And we actually had this brainstorm because they wanted to find a cool way to generate buzz around SPSM and getting folks at the conference to tweet. And we, oh my God, so we were on Hangouts and we actually pulled up Pixabay, and we tried a lot of different ideas, and then we came across a flying pig, right? And April's like, I really like flying pigs, and then we started looking at flying pig pictures. We found a picture that we liked, and we memed it, and it looked friggin' beautiful. What else did we learn? We learned that when you're having things produced, that you need to have a good margin around the edges, right, Tony? So we had some learning experience in the memeing process.
Called the bleed, because when they trim it, they trim off parts of it where it bleeds, where the ink bleeds.
And so we produced this great thing that was set on all the tables. Bart really did the wonderful all this wonderful work is all Bart. It's wonderful memeing. And then we really invited folks from the state of Texas to participate in social media, to expand their knowledge about breaking suicide prevention information, especially innovative information. And of course, we put this wonderful bit here at the bottom. This is the lead-in. And we had scheduled this out actually several months ago, Chelsea, right?
Yes.
And so I was not thinking about alerting you that, Dr. Chelsea Booth, we were going to put you on a card on all the tables in town. So, Dr. Chelsea Booth, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about Dr. Foreman's nasty surprises?
It was not a nasty surprise. It was a nice surprise. It was a bit of a surprise. One of my new coworkers texted me and was like, hey, you didn't tell me this thing. And I'm like, what is this thing? And this thing was this thing, and it's happening, and I'm here.
I think we agreed to in like April at AAS, like March, so it had been
it was a long time ago, a job before my current one. So
tell everybody what you do.
So hi everybody. I am, as of the end of May, I'm the manager of the Zero Suicide Institute at the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. Before that, I was at SAMHSA. I was the resident data nerd and state lead. And I'm the one who shows up at conferences and like talks to people about data and is like, this is important, here's why it's awesome. So thank you for letting me be here to do this to more of you.
Why is it important and why is it awesome? Explain like what you were doing.
Well, so I've been doing a lot of things, and first I should say that my nail color, in case anybody wanted to know, is actually have it here, is Mai Tai Crooked, also OPI.
For Where Did Susie's Man Go? Like they're almost identical, and I have that shade. Love it. That's all I'm saying.
It's amazing. It's perfect. It goes with everything. Regardless, that has something to do with data. So I, as the state lead for GLS, I was talking to some grantees over the years and trying to get folks to use data. And I had this grantee call me and be like, I don't understand, because I sent him to Whiskers, which we're going to talk about, and you guys are going to like, it's going to be amazing. But he called me and he's like, what does it mean that gender is variable? And so on the one hand, the anthropologist in me is like, yes, gender is variable over time, space, and culture. It means different things in different places. But in this case, the question was like, why, what is a variable? And in this case, it meant in that system, you can classify things male or female, which we can talk about is problem, but that's what a variable was. And so that sent me down the rabbit hole of creating a 200-page toolkit for all of our state grantees that would help them access data that they might find useful. I'm very excited about data.
200 pages? Was it really that long?
It was, most of them were between 180 and 215, depending on whether they had HCUP data. Because, like, I gave them screenshots and, like...
I looked at it. I didn't even notice it was that big.
That's because it was joyful and you loved it. Yes! Okay. So excited. Gonna calm. Gonna take a sip of tea. Hold on.
Sippy, sippy.
Data. It's because it's so useful. I'm so excited to be here because data, useful, important. Everybody should do this.
What are you?
I'm a robot who likes cartoons and data and World of Warcraft and Funyuns, apparently.
Oh, so your training is like as an anthropologist or something?
Yes. So 150 years ago, back when Franz Boas and Bronislaw Malinowski were still roaming the earth, which they were not anyway. Yeah, I was an anthropologist. I'm trained as a linguistic and political anthropologist. My work was in Nepal and India, looking at language politics and the production of social difference and all kinds of like awesome, delicious, yummy stuff.
So this idea for you of taking things that are really like powerful abstract concepts that aren't necessarily black and white and cut and dried and these sort of distinct integer like sort of data points and like then making it sort of mesh with this world of data, that's like something you came to us really familiar with.
Yes. I mean, I think... So I was in a weird position as an anthropologist because linguistic anthropologists, especially the kind that I was, we really blend like the idea that language as a thing is it's symbolic, right? I mean, it changes over time and space, but yet it's also, so it's not just a cultural thing, right? It's also a biological thing. Like, our brains are part of it, the way that our brains process when we switch between languages. You know, when you hurt parts of your brain, you're not actually able to communicate in the same ways. So that's a really difficult place to intersect, because, like, art and neuroscience don't always come together in the most, like, clear ways. And so, yes, I came into anthropology, or through anthropology, into suicide prevention, being like, let's just get in here and get dirty and nutty and figure out what's going on.
I came to it a similar way. But anyway, Dr. Andrews, you want to stop and comment, because I'm watching your face.
No.
Oh, Bart, you're never speechless. What the hell?
First of all, tell us what a linguistic anthropologist does, because I am fascinated with that. We talked a little bit about that when we were in Texas, because Chelsea and I, before you guys did the goodness of the Texas conference, and Texas is doing amazing things for those of you out in suicide prevention land. A shout out to Texas, who is at the cutting edge. Chelsea and I were doing the Zero Suicide Academy, which was awesome, and I learned that you were a linguistic anthropologist, and tell us what that means.
So it means a lot of things, but in my version of it, it means that I study the social use of language. So I don't necessarily study the grammar. Like, I could tell you about, like, ergative endings in the Nepali language and why that's important. Like, 10 people care about that. It's awesome, but, like, 10 people care about that. But I'm really interested in the way that people use language. So, for instance, the way that we talk at work is probably not the same way that we talk with our friends when we've been having, like, hanging out for a few hours and it's all just coming down, right? You talk very differently. And so in some places, we call that registers. So, like, there's formal registers, there's informal registers, but in some places, like in India, you can use discrete languages to do that. So where I was doing my work, like, you would use the Nepali language in certain ways, and then you'd use English in other ways, and then you'd use Bengali when you were feeling a particular way, and then Hindi and Tibetan and Marwari, and, like, so there's all of these different things. Like, if you're at the market, you're going to speak Marwari because most of the guys in the market are Marwari, so you speak that language. So that's what you study. And I went to a place that was, like, incredibly interesting, and people regularly spoke 5 different languages. And it was like, I have enough data, like, if I had free time, I could publish 100 articles because it's super interesting. But we do that at all the time, whether we're doing it in different languages or in our own language. So that's linguistic anthropology. Excitement about the way people use language socially.
How is that related to suicide?
Well, funny you should ask.
That was my question.
I stole it from you, Bart.
Yes.
I take it. Take it.
You may have my question. So I actually came into the field of suicide prevention kind of by chance. I was trying to leave academia because I don't know if you guys can tell, but like, formalness and constraint does not do well for me. And so I was trying to find a way to escape academia and, like, be out in the world where things I did made a difference and, like, people gave a damn about what I was doing. And so I signed up for the Presidential Management Fellowship Program. I jumped through a bunch of hoops and got in the program and told my then boyfriend, now husband, who's downstairs, being handsome and awesome, that I was going to accept the first job that I got offered. And the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA, called me and offered me the first job. Had they waited 20 minutes, I would have been working on tribal housing in Colorado. And I came in on my first day and met Dr. Richard McKeon, the chief of the suicide prevention branch at SAMHSA. And within 2 weeks, knew that suicide prevention was the thing I wanted. And so, because, I think that suicide as an issue is horrifying and tragic, but it's incredibly complex, and it's something that exists at the intersection of all of these different things, and that's what anthropologists are trained to do, right? We look at how individuals live within broader systems and how broader systems impact the individual and vice versa, and how history and biology and culture all come together to create meaning in people's lives. And so yeah, that's how you get from linguistic anthropology to suicide prevention.
So one of the things, you're amazing. And the reason that we wanted you here and that we wanted you on our opening show was because I had the privilege of sitting in your AAS presentation that was going to be on data. And I go to lots of things on data, and I'm into it, but very rarely do I start to get the vapors. Listen to me. So you were mentioning all these fancy databases, and that you knew all this stuff about data and suicide that was all news to me. And you told me you would talk about it, and I admit I've been a bit teased.
It's so naughty. Can we talk about it?
I think we can.
Are we allowed? I mean, but it means that it means diving in. And are you ready, Bart? Are you ready? Because I'm ready. I've been ready.
Time now.
Do you think everybody else is ready?
I think you're gonna make them ready.
Yeah. Okay. Because I'm so ready. Because honestly, like. This is so interesting. Can I say why I think that these systems are so important? Can I start there? Okay, I think these systems are important because, like, 100 reasons. But I'll give you a few because we don't have time for 100. I realize that this is, like, not a 12-hour-long show, even though I would be in it to win it for 12 hours. Okay. So there is never enough money for suicide prevention. There is never enough money. We do not have unlimited amounts of time to do anything. And so we have got to, as a field, get smart. So how do we do that? Information. That's all data is. I will be perfectly honest, I am not a math person. I never was a math person. It delights me that, like, Einstein couldn't do adding and subtracting, because I also have problems with that. So it is not about math, right? It is about information, and it tells us what we need to do. And so all of these different systems that we're going to be talking about tell us different things that we need to know. Everything from, who's dying, where are they dying, what do we need to focus on? Why are certain settings really, really important? So those are all of the things that I want to talk about if y'all are cool. Or we could talk about the Venture Brothers. I mean, it's up to you.
Or listen, I could listen to you talk forever. I'm down for both.
Okay, maybe we'll start with data, and then we can get into how, like, season 4 of the Venture Brothers was the best, and season 6 was good, but not as good as season 4. So, okay, well then let's start. So I'm hoping that people are, like, at computers and they can get to some of these systems, and I know that you guys posted the links. And so we're going to go from simplest to most complex, because some of these systems are a pain in the ass to get at, which is why I wanted to do that data toolkit, because there are some of these systems like HCUP that I am in love with. No joke. I, like, visit it like I would visit, like my husband. I visit this page, but it's incredibly difficult, and people told me, like, the only way that you can access a system is if you already know how to use it, which doesn't make any sense. So we're going to start with the easiest one, which is CDC's Whiskers, which is the web-based injury statistics query and reporting system. Forget that part. It's Whiskers. Imagine, like, so it is cute like cats. It also will give you injury-related mortality data. So it gives you the data for a population level. So, like, all people in states across the country, the number of deaths and the rates for some of these various causes. So you don't have to go to these systems and just look for suicide. If you want to understand about heart disease or diabetes or, like, whatever, go to this system. It has all the good, yummy stuff. But you can get 5 different kinds of reports just from the Whiskers fatal injury system. So that's the one where you'd go to find about suicide deaths. They also have a non-fatal injury where you'd go to understand about suicide attempts, but we will get there. So you can get different reports in this system. And you seriously can like put in all the different kinds of things you want to know. If you want to know about, let's see here, if you want to know how many girls between ages 13 and 19 die by suicide in your state, this is a system you go to. If you want to know the top 3 common methods for suicide death for Black, non-Hispanic young men between 13 and 20 in your state, this is where you go. There are some things you can't get in this system, so anything before like 1981 you can't get in this system. But many of you were not born before 1981. Wow. I was, but not everybody was. So things happened before 1981. You might want to look into it. Original Star Wars, original Star Trek. Let's see here. The Napoleonic Wars, if you can see the infographic behind me, also happened before 1981. But you cannot get data about suicide deaths in states and nationally before 1981. There's some other stuff you can't get in that system, but there's a ton of good stuff.
Not collected, or what happened?
I mean, some of the things, it's because they weren't collected. So, for instance, you can't get information about Hispanic before 1990 because they weren't collecting on that. All they were collecting on were, like, black and white. Now, there's a lot more that you can get from the system, but that was like 100 years ago. So things were different back then. You also can't get things like information on transgender individuals. And I know that folks in the CDC have been working for years trying to get this information. But in general, you can now, as of 1990, get information on, for race, white, black, American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian Pacific Islanders, and other, which is often for multiracial folks or, you know, folks who weren't identified as such. You can all,
that race isn't that complex, and there aren't a lot of multiracial folks.
I mean, so here is where like the problem of data folks and the world like come together, because data folks like certainty, right? If you're going to count something every year, it really helps for you to be able to count the same things every year so that you can compare what happened today versus what happened in 1981. So anytime you mess with that, it means that comparing the data is difficult. So for the data people, that's really important and a huge thing. For those of us outside who are like, but wait, race is not that easy, it is a cultural construct. Wait, sex is totally complicated and completely culturally dependent. What the hell? Why don't you just fix this? It's difficult because you've got like one point of view and another point of view, and we want data to do things, and they want data to do things, and it's hard. So the key is to like
2 sets?
Well, I mean, yes and no, because then it gets really complicated, because then you've got to make sure that you're counting things in both the old way and the new way. And so that's hard. That's like twice the amount of work. And if you're tracking deaths across the entire United States, like that is so super complicated, and the fact that we can even do that makes us like really advanced. But like, so we're better than like the places in the world where they have no idea why people are dying, how they're dying, how many are dying. So there's like all the way over here, and then we're like here in the middle. Perfection is here, and we're still getting there. It's like a slow car. The wheels fall off sometimes, but we're going to get over here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, okay, good.
Like,
good.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, data people, listen to the rest of us. And the rest of us, like, understand that for data people, it's hard because, like, computers and numbers and comparability of data sets and, like, just, like, talk to each other. If you get nothing else from, like, what I say tonight, just, like, listen to people and try to understand where they're coming from and then, like, do better. I'm done. Like, mic drop. I'm out.
Woo!
No, okay, I'm not, because I've only talked about one system. So there are some other limitations in Whiskers besides like not having certain like race and ethnic data. you cannot get county level data for death data because a lot of counties, right, the numbers are really small, and you've got to protect people's privacy and anonymity. And so, you know, sometimes at a county level, like I know the county I grew up in, you know, we wouldn't have as many deaths as, say, the Kansas City metro area. And my county, which, Bart, it's Johnson, right? Bart, Tony, did I get that right?
Joe Wyandotte or Johnson? I don't know. Are you a Johnson? She's a Johnson County here?
I think I'm Johnson. I think I'm Johnson County.
You're KCMO.
I know, but I just moved here a few months ago, so I'm learning all the things.
You're in Missouri.
Technically.
You're in Missouri, not
Oh,
Johnson.
is she in Jackson County? Then you're if you're in Missouri, you're in Jackson.
Then I'm in Jackson. Okay, I'm in Jackson County. So, like, my county here, lots of people. Where I grew up in Indiana, fewer people. So you want to make sure that, like, you know, by releasing this death information, you're not, like, you know, talking about an individual, but you're talking about, like, numbers as a whole. Because it's really, and this is where, again, like, that population level is important.
Like, what about traffic fatalities? They do traffic fatalities by county, don't they?
In this system, no.
Got it. Okay. So we're still just only talking about whiskers.
Well, and not even just whiskers. Just whiskers fatal injury, so deaths.
Got it.
So just this system. So this is the system, and I actually, if I knew how to share my screen, I totally would, because I have like a decision tree. I'm going to get it to you guys. It's going to be great.
In kindergarten, Chelsea.
Sharing is caring.
Do I care? I don't know if I care.
Interrupt you. This is awesome. Keep going.
So, so this is a system that you go to if you want to find out, like, what the death rate is. So, you know, when you see those numbers of averages per 100,000, right? Like, the U.S. national rate is something something per 100,000. So this is a system that you would go to find that number for a particular year and for a particular location, whether you want national numbers or state numbers. And I would really encourage you guys, like, look at your state numbers. National numbers are important, but there's so much variability state to state that most states, right, because of the way averages work, are either above or below the national average, because the national average is the average. It's like the middle. So it doesn't really tell you that much. So go to your state data. It also, you know, when you see those charts that the CDC puts out, that's like that box that has the breakdowns by age group, and then it shows that, like, suicide for most age groups is in the top 10 every year since, I don't even know when.
1981.
Yeah, so this is a system that tells you that. This is a system that generates that. Also, April, like, love you for knowing that. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that's available in this system. You can also, though, find out the average, like, years of life lost. If you're really interested in some of it, getting down and dirty in some of these numbers, like average lifetime cost of a suicide death. So in terms of, you know, healthcare costs, lost wages, all of those sorts of things. For certain people, those numbers are really important, and you can get that in here. So whiskers, fatal injury, also because it's CDC, like, they tell you how to get all the data that you need. Like, just go to Whiskers and follow the instructions, and you will totally get what you need, because it's CDC, and they're amazing, and they're super smart, and they just, like, tell you how to get stuff. So go forth and be awesome with Whiskers fatal injury. Yes, Tony, do you have a question?
So, since they aggregate the data at the county level, what challenges does that create for people who are trying to do data science?
Yeah, so it means that, for instance, you know, within a state, you can only look across an entire state. So if you're a tiny state like Delaware, you only have like 3 counties. That means, I know, it's like well, it's not the tiniest state.
I'm sorry, Delaware, I'm sure it's not the size.
No, you know what, Harvey, like, in Delaware, crushing it all. Delaware's, so I was the government project officer for Delaware, which is why I thought of them, because I work with them a lot. Tiny state, so 3 counties. That means that your state numbers are pretty close because you only got 3 counties. Texas. My husband's from Texas. I love you, Texas. Why do you need so many damn counties? I mean, I know why you do, because you're the size of some countries.
You're coming for it, Chelsea, now.
No, I love Texas. I go to Texas all the time. Abilene,
Their
like...
state suicide prevention conference is as big as the national conference.
Right? Like,
They have
Texas...
so many counties.
Yes, so Texas is and Ohio, another really good example. Huge states, a ton of different counties, a lot of variability, right? Like, what goes on in Austin is really different than some of the counties, like where my husband came from, out in Abilene, or even further in West Texas, or southern Texas. So in bigger states, you've got a ton of variability. You've got urban, suburban, rural, frontier, like, you know, in Alaska, I mean, Arctic Circle, how do you compare that with Juneau? You can't. And so for a system like this, if you're trying to understand a really big, complex state, this will give you your state numbers. This is not going to give you that, like, fine-grained, what is going on in my county? Where do we need to target? What kind of methods are people using? And how do we, like, you know, educate folks and do some population-level interventions to do some serious work? It's not going to help you that much. But if you are in, like, Delaware or Rhode Island, like, Whiskers fatal injury will be fine for you because there's only a couple of counties. You are as worthy as Texas, though. Just remember that, even if you're teeny tiny.
Good sum up. So Whiskers is simpler, then it gets more complex?
Well, so there's another system in Whiskers that is the non-fatal injury. So that's for suicide attempts.
Got it.
So if you want to understand, you know, who's dying by suicide, you can go to this system. It does have some limitations, but they also have 5 different reports. There's only 2 that I think really apply to suicide. So one of them will give you the number of non-fatal injuries treated in emergency departments, which is super important because a lot of folks, right, like, where do we send people? Emergency departments. We can talk about why that's not the best thing, but we'll get there. And then you can also get leading causes of non-fatal injuries, so all of the leading causes of injuries treated in emergency departments. So I will say this, though. For this system, it's really important to remember this, that suicide attempts cannot be differentiated from non-suicidal self-injury. And that's really important. Now, there's some debate in the literature about whether that's an important distinction or not. For this system, it collapses both of those. So suicide attempts, non-suicidal self-injury, those are in here. There's also some issues with the data in terms of short-term tracking. So, like, if you want to compare 2011 to 2012, that's kind of difficult because there are confidence intervals. We don't need to go into that. But it's just important to know that this system does have some limitations. And that's actually important to remember for all of these systems, right? I mean, numbers get quoted from these systems all the time. And it's important to remember that no system is perfect. I mean, a system is created by people. It's staffed by people. Good people, people who mean really well and try to do their best, but we are still people. And so for all of these systems, you know, they rely on reporting. And it means that, for instance, where I grew up in Indiana, and it depends, you know, where you are and what state, if you're a coroner state or a medical examiner state, it doesn't really matter. But where I grew up until fairly recently, you didn't even need a high school diploma to qualify to be somebody who would call deaths and cause of death and certify deaths.
So let's just pause for our folks who are not inside baseball on this. So for those who are following along at home, like Louisiana, our coroners and our medical examiners and our death investigators they call the cause of death and they document that. And we talk about suicide often not being listed as a cause of death even when it's pretty obvious because there's so much stigma and controversy associated with that. And then there are some, you know, and who determines who writes the death certificate and the process for writing those. Like Kelsey can explain that populating these databases is really hard. You have people with variable levels of education or titles, and then they have variable levels of technology. So some people are still like typing on like carbon paper and filing paper files, and you've got some people have electronic databases.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, where I grew up outside of a major major-ish town in Indiana, but we were still small enough that if the medical examiner knew the family of somebody who died by suicide and knew that they weren't going to get the insurance money if it was classified as suicide and that it would destroy the family, they're not going to classify that death as a suicide. So, right, for data purposes, that's really problematic. That means the data are not accurate. But, like, they're your neighbors, right? They're your neighbors, and you know them, and you know that they're going to be destitute. And because that's the way that our insurance works, that life insurance works, right? This is where again you have these like two worlds. There's the data world where one thing is right. Things are either right or wrong. Things are either accurate or inaccurate.
It's a category. It's a definition. It's
exactly
objective, but it's not really because it's coming up against this sort of real human situation.
Exactly.
It has all of these data issues.
Bart's about to talk.
But it's not. This isn't about data, and I think this is where things get. So, and one, Chelsea's been very kind about our suicide data system. You're gracious. You're gracious. Our suicide tracking system is fucked up royally in the United States of America. There's no reason why we shouldn't have county, zip code, and census tract level suicide stats in almost real time if we wanted to do that. I'll give you an example. When there are flu scares, we're getting real-time data on flu deaths round the clock, right? They're coming through your screen. They're on the news. They're in the newspaper the next day. We don't treat suicide the same way. And this gets at the anthropological and cultural aspects. A coroner would never think twice about giving the wrong diagnosis on a death because of influenza. There's no way that would happen. A coroner's not going to go, oh, they would be accurate. So we literally have a culture, right, that is okay with not being transparent about suicide. And so there's different things that we have here. We've got a culture that does not respect, honor, truthfulness in suicide reporting. We also, and this is something that's in the thread that's really interesting, suicide death reporting is 18 months behind when the actual deaths are occurring, right? 18 months behind. So I was just doing a comparison. If you're lucky. So this is really interesting to me. I was just doing a comparison of South Korea's suicide rate to the United States suicide rate. South Korea's got up-to-date data. We don't. Why, Chelsea? Why does it take 18 months to get suicide data?
Nobody can tell me there's no stigma against suicide in South Korea, by the way. Anyway,
there's plenty. There's plenty. But they've got at least current data and they're reporting it.
That's my point. Stigma alone. It's not stigma alone. Go for it, Chelsea.
Yeah. No, it's a million different reasons, right? I mean, it is culture, it's funding, it's that, these systems have to be funded somewhere. Many of them, not all of them, but most of them are funded by the federal government. And if a line item gets cut, we don't get the data. And so, for instance, one of the systems I'm going to talk about, the Healthcare Cost and Utilization Project, HCUP, which is an amazing system. It's so good. It has the potential to be better. The agency where that's housed, their budget has been in different versions of the federal budget. For the last few years, their budget has been zeroed out, which means they, for much of the year, don't even know if they have jobs. They don't know if they're going to be able to continue to collect these data. So part of the issue is that there's just not funding for this, right? I mean, Zika, at least I don't know, right? Where does the funding for Zika come from? Much of it has come from the executive branch in the White House because voting on anything is incredibly difficult. And so it's a ton of different reasons. It's human reasons, it's systematic reasons, it's cultural reasons, it's all the different kinds of reasons. I mean, it's like, how do you address institutional and systemic racism? There's no one way you can do that. It's the same thing about suicide reporting. There is not one way of addressing this because it's complex. We're a huge country with huge issues, and for some people, right, tracking deaths by particular methods is not okay, and congressmen are never going to vote for that. And so we're not going to know until some things change.
Speaking of things that happened before 1981, there are medical examiners' offices and coroners' offices in the United States that have no computers in them.
Yeah.
And they're using typewriters to
Yes.
type out death certificates.
Yes.
And
in some states, they don't even have fax machines to send fax reports. Mm-hmm. I worked with a state that I will not name because this is not totally uncommon. They would have to drive their reports to a central office because it was rural and frontier places and there was no money for it, and it was cheaper for them to drive than to lay down the fast internet lines or phone lines. Who, like, if you don't have the internet, if you don't even have a fax machine, like, I don't even understand. It hurts. Okay,
so
I'm back.
Let me sum up, because this is really critical. So one of the things that gets in the way of us doing good research is just direct funding dollars for research and suicide. And the other one is that we are also funding the institutions that would collect data about death, including suicide. And that's like a whole different funding stream. And so these political tides, these sort of funding issues that are sometimes about stigma and sometimes about other things, and about many things, make really, really complicate having good data so that we can start to measure what we do. And that for a 10th leading cause of death, that's pretty alarming.
It is. It is. And it's, again, I mean, I keep coming back to this, and I think it's really important, but, like, there's the data stuff, and then there's real world, and they, like, are coming together, and it is not an easy fit. And that takes a lot of finesse, and it takes data expertise and cultural expertise and attention and focus and, you know, people giving a shit about data. Like, I realize I am a huge fan of all kinds of data. Like, give me data on anything. You know, my husband and I run our lives by spreadsheet because I love data. I love tracking all the things. April, shut up.
I love you so much.
I see you laughing at me.
No, I'm
whatever. I can tell you the trends in our spending on, like, 5 different budget elements and all of our utilities, because you know what? That tells me something. I can do something with it. And that's the thing that I think is so important about all these data. If we are collecting this, do something with it. Like, otherwise, we should use this money for other stuff. If we're not going to use these data, and a lot of people don't, whether it's because they don't know that it's there, or data is scary, because sometimes it is, or because it's scary to actually know what's going on, like, do something with it. Like, these systems, I don't just go into them because I'm a data nerd and I love it, but, like, do something with it. When you see that suicide is in the top 10 leading causes of death, like, get off your ass and do something. If you can tell, and I realize that we're running out of time, so I'm going to skip ahead to the deaths in custody, which is something the Department of Justice reports on, and I've not spent a lot of time in this system. So I went in before our chat tonight, and I did a little analysis. So in arrests, so in the process of arrests from 2003 to 2009, 60% of the deaths during arrests were homicide by law enforcement. Guess what was number 2?
Suicide.
It was suicide tied with intoxication deaths. So what does that tell you? Do something, right? We need to work with law enforcement, because 11% of people who die during arrests die by suicide. Next thing in this system, another point of intervention. I know, I saw that, and I just, like...
Say that, say that again, Chelsea. Say that again.
11% of deaths during, like, in the process of arrests, 11% of those are suicides.
Mm-hmm. Of note, and just a couple times, because VA has a really, really large healthcare system, we also have Veterans Justice Outreach, so we do share information with criminal justice systems when we have patients that are going to be with them for a while. And so we share information about suicide watch, suicide risk, suicide attempts that happen while they're in custody, or if they're on the risk list, or things like that, for coordination of care, which is really great. Some folks are mentioning in the UK that they have up-to-date information about suicide deaths. We should note in the UK is they have sort of one big healthcare system, so they have to collect this information these ways, collected in the healthcare system. So having, like, one big uniform system that everybody's a member of helps, but the United States doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think, and I want to get back to VA, DOD, and like the state of Kentucky for places that report on suicide deaths. So I want to like, we're going to get back to that. I'm putting, do you guys remember like pop-up video?
Got it.
Pop-up video?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The bubble is here. It's going to stay here, and we're going to get back to it. But because I want to say one more thing about the deaths in custody data system by Department of Justice. So this is a system that I never see referenced, and I want you all to go out and pay attention to this system and make sure this system gets funded. So they're reporting on 2013, so 3-year-old data, well, 2.5. So problem, but deaths in local jails and state prisons, all right, in 2013. What do you think the #1 cause of death in local jails and state prisons were?
Suicide.
Damn.
So you know what? We have these data. We have these data. We data nerds out there, and I know there are many of you out there, it is our responsibility to take that information and give it to the people who are going to do something about it, because that information is huge. The #1 cause of death in local jails and state prisons is suicide. Like, how many of you watching this, listening to this, how many of you that is the first time you have heard that?
Not for me, but...
It was the first time I'd heard it.
Really?
I read that, and I, like, went out this door and, like, shouted at my husband and was like, why did I not include this in... like every talk I've given in the last couple of years. This is really important.
We imprison 1/4 of our citizens of the state of Louisiana, so what happens in prisons is really important, and I do a lot of outreach with, for example, the parish warden. Like, just because the imprisonment rate is so high in the state.
Yeah. Well, and this is, I think, a really good chance to talk about the difference between population-level data and system-level data. So population-level data, all the peoples, all right? Just like all the peoples. State of Missouri, population, all the peoples, right? Pretty straightforward. System-level data is actually more actionable, so it's data that we can do more about, because there is not enough data to, like, change everything in an entire state. Not even Rhode Island, not even Delaware. Like, y'all don't have enough money to do this. So population level data is really important so that you understand kind of the baseline of what's going on. But system level, these are like the little contained things, right? So think of jails and prisons. Think of emergency departments, inpatient units, schools. These are contained systems, right? So like I would not be in the system of whatever local school is, oh, there's this awesome French language medium school down the street. So like, even though I love that place and I walk by it and I'm like, if I had kids, I would take them there and they would learn French and like talk at me in French. I am not in that system. So if you're looking and trying to make changes in that system, I wouldn't pop up. If you were looking at population level data, I would pop up. But I don't matter for the French medium school. Who matters are the students who are there, the people who work there. So it's a contained system. So in a system, right, you see really different things. So what we know from the deaths in custody system on the mortalities, the deaths in local jails and state prisons, people who are in our care, whether it's a jail or a state prison or whatever system we're talking about, these are people who are our responsibility. If I had a child and they were at that school, when I give my child to them, I would say, take care of them. They're in your system. If my child is in a local jail or a state prison or in an inpatient unit, right, this is somebody who is given over into somebody else's care.
Or better, your system or the Department of Defense.
Exactly, exactly. So these are people in our care, the public behavioral health system. It's why so many states are starting to look at what's going on in their community mental health centers, because these are the sort of safety net that is catching the people in the most need. These are people in our care, and these data systems tell us what's going on. So we know nationwide for local jails and state prisons, the #1 cause of death is suicide. These are people in our care. It is our responsibility to take care of them. Whether they're in a prison, whether they're in the VA system, whether they are active duty military, whether in an inpatient unit, I don't care. These are people who are in our care, and it is our responsibility to keep them safe. And these numbers, I wrote this down. This number tells me we are not doing a good job of this. This is messed up. We need to do better. And that's what data can help us do. It can help us target efforts, and it can also help us understand and keep the focus on what's important, right? If I didn't know how much money was in my checking account, I wouldn't know if I could have, well, A, bought this fabulous dress that I bought at Donna's Dress Shop. I wouldn't know what that would do to my budget. But you know what? I know how much money is in my checking account, and so I know that I can pay my bills or not. I know that I can buy a fabulous new dress for my SPSM friends. I know that I can do that. If I don't know what my budget is, I don't know what I can do. If we don't know what's going on in these systems, or even population level, then we don't know what we can do. But guess what? Even though these systems are flawed, there is stuff we can do. And it keeps the attention on it, right? Top 10 causes of death. Suicide is in there. So we know that. That means we need to keep the focus on it. Heart disease is a focus. Accidents are a focus. Why is suicide not a focus? It should be. We've got data that says that. And now I'm going to pull my little pop-up video box back. We only have a few examples of systems that are tracking this and reporting it publicly. VA does. DOD does. State of Kentucky does. There's one other state I'm forgetting, and I'm so sorry.
Montana?
What?
Well, Montana is tracking and creating ways to look at all their suicide deaths. Like, way to go, Montana.
Yeah, I mean, and Ohio is doing, I got to do a shout out to Cynthia Fontanella at the Ohio State University.
Yeah.
And Helen Ann Sweeney in the state of Ohio state government, because they've been doing analyses the last few years looking at their public behavioral health system and where the suicide deaths are. And actually, in my old office, I haven't posted it yet. Cynthia and Helen Ann, I am going to remedy this. So behind me, I have this awesome infographic about Napoleon's march to Moscow during the War of 1812. In my old office, I had all of the Ohio data graphics because they broke it down by county. And what they discovered was there were a handful of counties that had significantly higher suicide death rates. So that state is targeting those counties to improve suicide care. They're doing zero suicide academies, ensuring that health and behavioral health systems are doing suicide safer care in a comprehensive and smart way. How are they able to do that? Because they had the data to tell them this is a high-risk spot, and we really need to focus on this area, because there are other areas in the state where there's less need. There's no area in most states where there is no need, but there are areas where there's higher need, where there are higher health disparities, higher numbers of deaths and attempts, and those are the areas that we need to focus on first, because they are health disparities.
And it's not just where do you focus, not that we have finite resources, so we have to sort of think where they go. It's also to know when something works, because what may work in one place may not in another. We don't know for sure what works at a really big system level. We have some thoughts, but like the data then tells you, like if I buy the dress, can I buy 3 dresses? Can I buy 10 dresses? Have I spent enough on shoes?
Yeah.
But you've got to constantly be making investments, right?
Yeah. Or for instance, so to get back to my awesome spreadsheet for my household expenses, I found out when we just moved into a new house in Kansas City, and I track all of our utilities. I learned that from May to June, now granted, we have like the hottest summer on record. It was like heat index of 120. It was horrible. But what I learned was our electricity bill jumped up by 350%. Yes, it was hot, but is that the only thing? So guess what? In this little closet here is the access to the attic. And we went up there, and what we discovered was there is no insulation in this house. So, right, not good. House is built in 1939. Like zero insulation, not even like layers of newspaper, right?
Yes, there was no insulation over the closets in the upstairs floor, and so the closets were different temperature than everything else.
Nice. See, so I discovered the problem because I tracked the data. And so now, and yes, you know, next week as part of our like renovation of part of the house, we're having them blow insulation up there. I could have not known that for years, but tracking my expenses for utilities told me something was going on. That's what data does. It gives you information, and then you can change behavior. You can pour more money into trainings. You can make sure that health and behavioral health systems are ready to accept suicidal people and give them the treatments that actually work in ways that do not take away their agency and their personhood, right? Like,
yes, and importantly, it helps them find the things that do not work as well.
So that you're not losing money to things that aren't getting you results.
Just insulated attics don't help you retain air-conditioned air.
Exactly. So if my electricity bill, now granted, they're going to go down because of the fall, so this is also important when you're looking at data to pay attention to the context. So like, for instance, when you look at the suicide death rates over the last 10 years, there's been some important stuff that has happened in the last 10 years, right? There's been economic changes. There's been ongoing wars. So that's the context. So for instance, to keep with my like utility metaphor, I know that my utility costs are going to go down in terms of paying for heat, but if I blew the insulation in and next summer my costs for my air conditioning went back up to the same level they were this summer, that insulation is not working. I need to put in new windows, right? So that's exactly what it is. You've got to pay attention to the broader context, but also pay attention so that you know what works and what doesn't. And also, my insulation better work because I am not putting in new windows in this house. There's like a million damn windows. I have like windows in closets. It's awesome. I am not replacing these windows. So insulation better work.
We had the old sort of restoration glass windows, and we just said, fuck it, they're gorgeous. And
right? Totally gorgeous.
So
but anyway, Dave.
I know. So we're at the last couple minutes. It's time for final thoughts. And the truth was, we didn't get through all the databases. But the good news is that you don't have to get through all the databases in 50 minutes, and we're not gonna. You understand some of the basic principles, and that we've really talked about wisqars, so you sort of understand that each of these databases have a context. So my final thought is you're going to have to connect with Chelsea on Facebook or on Twitter or at Zero Suicide Academy. Chelsea, where can people find you and learn more about your databases?
Well, I would recommend that everybody move to Kansas City, Missouri, because it's like adult Disney World.
Everyone's going to accuse us of loading the deck.
Donna, wait, let me just show you this like adorable dress from Donna's dress shop, and then this awesome little sweater. Kansas City, Missouri. You can't get this other places. So, yes, I would say, wait, hold on, I'm torn. Just a minute. Okay, I'm back. Yes, move to Kansas City, Missouri. It's delightful. We have barbecue, and people here are awesome. Otherwise.
So if you can't move to Kansas City, how do people connect with you and get this information? Because folks are really hot for it.
Okay, well, that is so awesome, and I am super jazzed up about that. So if you get me on Twitter, I am at Indiana Booth, the state of Indiana, my last name Booth, Indiana Booth. See, I'm super clever.
Indiana.
Right, I didn't get this PhD for nothing. I'm super smart. So you can get me there. You can get me, I work at EDC, which hosts the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. So my email address there is C as in cat, Booth, B-O-O-T-H, at edc.org. I really, though, recommend Kansas City. Facebook, I actually have no idea how you find me on Facebook, but I'm Chelsea Booth. If you often see a lady in a bee costume, that's me. Because I think you can see it, wait, right there. Halloween 2 years ago. What? Dr. B, right, Booth, B. See what I did there?
Oh my God, I should totally do a Dr. F phone call.
Right? But the last thing I will say, I am working on, in my spare time, of which I don't have a lot, because I'm also trying to work on an article with some awesome people at a university that will remain nameless right now because I don't have permission to say it, but talking about gaming and social connectedness and the possible impacts on suicidal ideation. So
Pinkham, who wants to ask us about this? I totally want to do an SPSM on that. Bo Pinkham says.
I mean, talk to me about World of Warcraft, because since 2005. Anyway, but I am working on a generic version of the data toolkit, the one that I'm looking at, it's only 154 pages because this particular state didn't have HCUP data. So if you have HCUP data, it's going to be about 200 pages, but I'm working on a generic version that we can post on the SPRC website because honestly, these systems, yes, they are complicated, but there are super smart people everywhere who want to make these data sets useful for people who are going to go out and do something with the data. It takes a ton of time and energy to analyze and collect, analyze, clean up data. So we only have 24 hours in the day. So you got data people over here who spend all of their time doing this. We need people who will take these data and do something with it. Go out there and save lives with these data. That's what we need. And so there are people all over the place who want to do this. So you can email me, but like I'm only one person and I don't know all the things. If I were Rob Bossert, I would know all the things. If I were like other people like Des, I feel like Des knows all the things. There are tons of people who know all the things and you can reach out to them. And if they don't know all the things, tell them why it's important that you know this and tell them to go find the things. Like go find the things are out there. Because the stuff exists out there.
Yes, please somebody mean go find the things are out there.
I mean,
we're wrapping up. We're at the top of the hour. Let's get final thoughts from Bart, and then we're going to talk about where people can go.
So one, there are many requests to have Dr. Chelsea Booth back on the show. So I think that that's something that we're simply, I'm making an executive decision. That's something that's just going to have to happen. Two, big shout out to the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, who hires folks like Dr. Chelsea Booth, lets them get on shows like SPSM Chat, that lets people with passion and intelligence and drive get out there to help us change the culture. Chelsea, that was amazing. You taught me so much tonight. I just want to say thank you. So much love coming your way. You should see the feed, Chelsea. When you get a chance, it's going to absolutely blow your mind. Amazing. You were phenomenal. I just filled with gratitude, and thank you for sharing your wisdom. Incredible.
Yes.
Whenever you want me back, I'm here.
We will talk about scheduling you for spring. I have an idea. It is the hour. You have come back for season 4. Wow. Don't forget that we have SPSM Unpacked coming up right after this. Follow the links in Twitter. You're going to have Atos, Chris Maxwell. They're going to be talking about you, Chelsea, because they're going to have a lot to discuss. And stay tuned. There are all sorts of great things next week. Spotify playlists. If you like music and you want to talk about how people use music for recovery and how that happens in social media, it's happening next week. Here. So excited. We're going to be cruising right into Suicide Prevention Month. Glad to see you all for season 4. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for having me.